Captain Lydia Porter stood at the viewport of the USS Intrepid, watching the stars streak by as the ship traveled at faster-than-light speed. Earth had achieved this technology just 3 years ago, and it had changed everything. Now humans were part of something bigger, the Galactic Alliance. Lydia sighed and ran a hand through her short brown hair. Being part of the Alliance wasn't quite what they had expected. Most alien species were much larger than humans, 8 to 12 feet tall with strength to match. Next to them, humans seemed small and weak. The aliens called them the runts, or the tiny ones behind their backs, and sometimes even to their faces. "Captain, Admiral Morgan is requesting to speak with you," said Lieutenant Gabriel Martinez from his station at Communications. The young tactical officer's voice pulled Lydia from her thoughts. "Put him through to my ready room," she replied, turning away from the viewport. In her small office, Lydia activated the screen on her desk. Admiral John Morgan's face appeared, looking serious as always. "Captain Porter," he nodded in greeting. "I assume you've heard the news? About the Draconian Empire attacking Alliance outposts?" "Yes, sir. 3 stations destroyed at the edge of Alliance space." The Draconians were a reptilian warrior species that had been expanding their territory for decades. They were even larger than most Alliance species, some standing 15 feet tall with thick scales that served as natural armor. The Alliance Council has called for all member species to contribute military forces, Admiral Morgan said. Earth has pledged 10,000 soldiers. Lydia raised her eyebrows. "That's a significant commitment." "Yes, but you should have seen the reaction when I announced it," Morgan frowned. The Alliance representatives actually laughed. The Zentari ambassador said we'd be better off sending no one and saving our tiny warriors from harm. Lydia felt her face grow hot with anger. "They have no idea what humans are capable of." "Exactly." Morgan nodded. "And that's why this is important. I'm sending you and the Intrepid to lead our forces. Dr. Wright will be joining you as advisor on alien physiology." "Thank you for the opportunity, sir," Lydia said, straightening her shoulders. "We won't let Earth down." After the call ended, Lydia returned to the bridge. The crew was busy preparing for their new mission. Lydia called a meeting of her senior officers in the conference room. "As you've heard, we're being deployed against the Draconian Empire," she began, looking at the faces around the table. "What you may not know is that the Alliance doesn't expect much from us. They think we're too small to make a difference." Murmurs of discontent spread around the table. "Dr. Wright will be joining us tomorrow to provide information about Draconian biology and tactics," Lydia continued. "Lieutenant Martinez, I want you to study their battle formations and ship designs. Find weaknesses." Martinez nodded eagerly. "Yes, Captain." "They think size is everything," Lydia said, leaning forward. "We're going to show them that the size of the fight in the warrior matters more than the size of the warrior in the fight." The next day, Dr. Alan Wright arrived on the Intrepid. The tall, thin scientist with wire-rimmed glasses had spent years studying the biology of various alien species. The senior crew gathered again to hear his presentation. "The Draconians evolved from apex predators on a high-gravity world," Dr. Wright explained, showing images of the reptilian warriors on the screen. "They have incredible strength and natural armor, but there are important weaknesses we can exploit." The crew listened intently as Wright continued. "First, despite their size, they have poor endurance. Their metabolism requires significant rest periods between bursts of activity. Second, their large size makes them less maneuverable in tight spaces. Third, their eyes are adapted for a dimmer sun than ours. Bright light causes them discomfort." "Lieutenant," Martinez raised his hand. "What about their technology? Their ships?" "Good question," Wright nodded. "Their technology reflects their physiology. Their ships are heavily armored but not very agile. Their control systems are designed for their 3-fingered hands, making them difficult for other species to operate." Over the next few days, more Earth ships arrived, forming a fleet of 20 vessels carrying the 10,000 troops that Earth had committed to the fight. Admiral Morgan came aboard the Intrepid for a final briefing before their departure. "The Alliance Military Command has assigned us to defensive positions on these 3 planets," Morgan said. pointing to locations on the star map. They're not considered critical. Essentially, they're keeping us out of the way. Several officers frowned at this news. Good, Lydia said, surprising everyone. Let them underestimate us. It gives us time to prepare and observe. Morgan smiled slightly. That's why I wanted you leading this mission, Captain Porter. 2 days later, the Earth fleet departed for the front lines. As they prepared to enter faster-than-light travel, Lydia addressed the crew over the ship's communication system. Men and women of the Earth Defense Force, we are about to face our first real test as members of the galactic community. The enemy we face is formidable. The allies at our side doubt our worth. But throughout human history, we have overcome challenges by using our minds when our muscles weren't enough. She paused, looking around the bridge at her crew. The Alliance calls us the tiny army. They mock our size. But they have never faced humans in battle. They don't know our history of adaptation, innovation, and determination. They don't understand that humans never give up, no matter the odds. The crew stood a little straighter at their stations. We will study our enemy. We will find their weaknesses. We will work harder and train smarter than anyone expects. And when the time comes to fight, we will show the galaxy that the size of a species doesn't determine its courage or its worth. The journey to the front would take 3 weeks. During that time, the human forces trained relentlessly. They developed new tactics based on Dr. Wright's information about draconian physiology. They modified their weapons and equipment to maximize their advantages. When they arrived at their assigned positions, Alliance commanders barely acknowledged them. The massive Zentari general in charge of the sector assigned them to guard a mountain pass on the planet Nexus 7 that he deemed strategically unimportant. Lydia and her officers studied the terrain carefully. This pass may be narrow, but it leads directly to the main Alliance base, Lieutenant Martinez pointed out. If I were planning an attack, I'd consider this a prime target. The general thinks it's unimportant because the passage is too small for their larger species to move through efficiently, Lydia said, but it's perfect for human-sized troops. Or draconian scout forces, Martinez added. Lydia nodded. Prepare defensive positions along the entire pass. If the draconians attack here, we'll be ready. A week later, Lydia's prediction proved correct. Draconian forces launched a massive assault across the sector. While the main Alliance forces engaged the primary Draconian fleet, a significant force headed straight for the unimportant mountain pass on Nexus 7. The tiny army prepared for battle, ready to show the galaxy what humans could do. The mountain pass on Nexus 7 erupted with laser fire as the first wave of Draconian scouts entered the narrow valley. Sergeant Kelly Banks and her special operations team were hidden among the rocks, watching the reptilian warriors advance. The Draconians moved with confidence, their scaled bodies glistening in the planet's bright sunlight. They stood nearly twice as tall as the largest human and carried weapons that matched their massive size. Hold position, Kelly whispered into her comm unit. Let them get deeper into the pass. Her team waited silently as more Draconians entered the valley. The enemy seemed unconcerned, clearly not expecting resistance in this unimportant location. Kelly smiled. The Alliance commanders had been wrong to dismiss this pass, and wrong to dismiss humans. When the valley held about 50 Draconians, Kelly gave the signal. Now! All along the valley walls, hidden humans activated devices designed by Corporal Ethan Cruz, the team's demolitions expert. The devices didn't cause explosions. Instead, they triggered carefully positioned rock slides that blocked both the entrance and exit of the pass. The Draconians looked up in surprise as rocks crashed down around them. They were trapped. Phase 2, Kelly ordered. Private Olivia Davis activated a series of powerful light projectors. The valley was suddenly flooded with intensely bright light. The Draconians roared in pain, covering their sensitive eyes. Dr. Wright's information about their light sensitivity had been correct. Only then did the humans open fire. Their weapons had been modified based on knowledge of draconian physiology, targeting the few weak spots in their natural armor. The battle was fierce but quick. Within 20 minutes, the entire draconian advance force had been captured or neutralized. Kelly reported back to Captain Porter. First wave contained, but there will be more. On the bridge of the USS Intrepid, Lydia Porter received the report with satisfaction. Good work, Sergeant. Hold your position. Lieutenant Martinez approached with a data pad. Captain, our sensors are detecting a much larger draconian force gathering beyond the mountain range. At least 2,000 troops. Lydia studied the sensor readings. They've realized the strategic value of this pass. Alert all ground forces to prepare for a major assault. The lieutenant hesitated. Should we request support from Alliance forces? They're engaged with the main draconian fleet, Lydia replied. And even if they weren't, I doubt they'd consider this position worth defending. She stood up from her command chair. We'll handle this ourselves. Major Nathan Harris, the fleet's chief military strategist, had developed a multi-layered defense plan for the mountain pass. As the main draconian force approached, his plan went into action. The narrow terrain that the Alliance had dismissed as unimportant became a perfect killing zone for the smaller, more agile human forces. The Draconians attacked in waves, using their superior strength and heavy weapons to try to force their way through, but the pass bottlenecked their forces, preventing them from using their numbers effectively. Human snipers targeted Draconian commanders from hidden positions in the high rocks. Special ops teams used their smaller size to move through tiny crevices and attack from unexpected angles. Hours into the battle, Chief Medical Officer Ben Howard had set up a field hospital in a cave system behind the human defensive line. He worked tirelessly, treating wounded soldiers and getting them back into the fight as quickly as possible. How bad is it out there? He asked a wounded soldier as he treated a laser burn on the man's arm. They keep coming, the soldier replied. But we're holding. They can't figure out how we're moving around so fast. Dr. Howard smiled. They're used to fighting enemies their own size. They don't understand what humans can do. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Zoe Miller led a squadron of scout ships on hit-and-run attacks against Draconian reinforcements. The human ships were smaller and less heavily armed than Draconian vessels, but they were far more maneuverable. Zoe's pilots used the mountain terrain to their advantage, popping up from behind peaks to fire quick bursts before disappearing again. This is Red Leader, Zoe said into her comm. We've taken out another transport. That's 3 down. Good work, Red Leader, came Captain Porter's voice. Return to base for refueling. As Zoe's ship banked around a mountain peak, she saw the full scale of the battle below. The valley floor was littered with fallen Draconians. The human defensive positions remained intact. Pride swelled in her chest. The tiny army was holding its ground. Back at the command post, Captain Porter received an urgent communication from Admiral Morgan. The Alliance High Command has finally noticed what's happening at Nexus 7, Morgan said, his face serious on the screen. When they realized the Draconians were committing so many resources to take your position, they did a strategic reassessment. And? Lydia asked. Turns out your mountain pass is the key to the entire sector. If the Draconians break through, they'll have a direct path to 3 major Alliance worlds. Morgan shook his head. The Zentari general who assigned you there didn't even bother to check the long-range maps. Lydia wasn't surprised. The Alliance commanders had been so dismissive of humans that they hadn't bothered to consider their strategic input. We've been holding, Lydia reported, but we've lost. Nearly 200 people and the Draconians keep coming. Alliance reinforcements are en route, Morgan replied. They should reach you within 6 hours. Can you hold that long? Lydia looked at the tactical display showing the human forces still maintaining their positions despite being vastly outnumbered. We'll hold, sir. After the communication ended, Lydia called Major Harris to her side. The Alliance finally realizes this position matters. They're sending help, but it won't arrive for 6 hours. Harris studied the battle map. The Draconians are regrouping for another major push. They've brought up heavy artillery. Options? Lydia asked. We've been fighting defensively, Harris said. They won't expect us to attack. Lydia considered this. You're suggesting we take the fight to them? A small strike force. Harris nodded. Target their command structure while they're reorganizing. Create confusion in their ranks. It was risky, but Lydia saw the logic. Make it happen. An hour later, Sergeant Banks led her special ops team through a tiny crevice in the mountain wall that the massive Draconians couldn't possibly navigate. They emerged behind enemy lines, close to the Draconian command post. Remember, Kelly told her team, we're not here to engage the entire force. We target the commanders, then disappear. The team moved silently through the Draconian camp. The reptilian warriors never thought to look for enemies so deep behind their lines. When the attack came, it was swift and precise. The human team took out the Draconian field commanders and destroyed their communications equipment before vanishing back into the mountain crevices. The effect on the Draconian forces was immediate. Without clear leadership, their next assault was disorganized and easily repelled by the human defenders. As the 6th hour approached, with Alliance reinforcements finally appearing on long-range sensors, the Draconians began a full retreat. The tiny army had held the line. A massive Zentari general arrived with the Alliance forces, looking down at Captain Porter with newfound respect. It seems, he rumbled in his deep voice, that we underestimated the value of small warriors. Lydia met his gaze steadily. Size isn't everything, General. The battle has only just begun. News of the human victory at the mountain pass spread quickly through Alliance channels. Captain Lydia Porter found herself invited to strategy meetings where just days ago, her presence would have been dismissed. The USS Intrepid had become a hub of activity, as Alliance commanders sought to understand how the tiny army had defeated a Draconian force many times its size. Your tactics were unexpected, said Kaloth, a massive blue-skinned commander from the Zentari forces. He towered over Lydia in the Intrepid's conference room, his forearms crossed over his chest. The Draconians fight with direct force. We Zentari do the same. Your approach was different. Humans have always had to adapt. Lydia explained. Throughout our history, we've faced bigger, stronger opponents. We learned to use our environment and our minds to overcome physical disadvantages. Kaloth nodded slowly. Perhaps there is wisdom in this approach. Meanwhile, Admiral Vexthor, commander of the Draconian fleet, raged at his subordinates in his massive flagship. The reptilian warrior's scales flushed red with anger as he reviewed the battle reports. How could you be defeated by these runts? He snarled at his officers. They are half our size. They used the terrain against us, one officer explained nervously. The narrow pass. Excuses. Vexthor slammed his fist down, cracking. The metal table. These humans were meant to be the weakest link in the Alliance. We targeted this sector specifically because of their presence. He pointed to the star map. Gather our forces. We will crush this human resistance and show the Alliance the folly of admitting such a primitive species to their ranks. Back on Nexus 7, Sergeant Kelly Banks led her team on reconnaissance missions beyond the mountain pass. The Draconians had retreated, but intelligence suggested they were regrouping. They're bringing in bigger weapons, Corporal Ethan Cruz reported after studying scans of the enemy camp. Heavy artillery that could blast through the mountain itself. Kelly frowned. They're not going to try the pass again. They're going to make a new path. The team rushed back to report their findings. Major Nathan Harris immediately began adapting their defensive strategy. We need to spread out, he told Captain Porter. If they create multiple paths through the mountains, we won't have the numbers to defend them all. Dr. Alan Wright, who had been studying tissue samples from fallen Draconian soldiers, requested an urgent meeting with Captain Porter and her senior officers. I've made a significant discovery, he said, displaying data on the screen. The Draconians have incredible strength and natural armor, but their cellular structure has a unique vulnerability. Their metabolism relies on a specific enzyme that breaks down during periods of extended exertion. Lieutenant Martinez leaned forward. What does that mean in practical terms? It means they literally can't fight at full capacity for more than about 6 hours without rest, Wright explained. After that, their strength decreases dramatically and their reflexes slow. Lydia saw the potential immediately. So if we can force them to fight continuously for more than 6 hours, they'll be operating at less than 50% efficiency, Wright finished. This information was the key to a new strategy. When the Draconians launched their next assault 3 days later, using massive energy weapons to blast new paths through the mountains, the human forces were ready. Instead of meeting the attack head-on, the humans engaged in what they called sustained harassment tactics. Small teams would attack, then retreat, drawing the Draconians into pursuit. When the Draconians committed forces to one area, the humans would strike somewhere else. This pattern continued hour after hour. Lieutenant Zoe Miller's scout ships played a crucial role, darting in to attack Draconian positions, then disappearing before the larger ships could respond effectively. Her pilots used cloud cover and mountain peaks to mask their movements, striking when least expected. By the 8th hour of continuous combat, the effect Dr. Wright had predicted became apparent. The Draconian forces began to slow. Their reactions became sluggish. Their accuracy decreased. "Now," ordered Captain Porter from the command center, "full assault." The human forces, who had been carefully rotating their troops to ensure rest periods, launched a coordinated attack across multiple fronts. The Draconians, exhausted from extended combat, couldn't respond effectively. Their lines broke. Their retreat became disorganized. Several Alliance commanders, including Kaloth, had been observing the battle. The massive Zentari turned to Lydia, with new respect in his eyes. "You knew they would weaken," he said. "This was your plan all along." Lydia nodded. "Every species has strengths and weaknesses. The key is finding them and adapting your strategy accordingly. The Alliance has much to learn from humans," Kaloth admitted. The victory was significant, but Admiral Vexthor was not finished. As his forces retreated from Nexus 7, he gathered his remaining ships for a desperate gamble. If he couldn't take the planet by ground assault, he would attack from orbit. His massive flagship moved into position, preparing to bombard the human positions from space. Captain Porter received the alert from Lieutenant Martinez. "Draconian warships moving into bombardment position. Our ground forces are at risk. Evacuate all personnel to underground shelters," Lydia ordered. "And prepare the Intrepid for space combat." The USS Intrepid, along with the other Earth vessels, was significantly smaller than the Draconian warships. In open space, they would be at a severe disadvantage. But Captain Porter had no intention of fighting fair. "All ships, implement Nebula Protocol," she commanded. The human fleet executed a maneuver they had practiced extensively during their journey to the front. They moved into the dense asteroid field that orbited Nexus 7. The larger Draconian ships couldn't follow without risk of collision. From within the asteroid field, the human ships launched a series of coordinated attacks. They would emerge from behind asteroids, fire precisely targeted shots at vulnerable points on the Draconian vessels, identified from Lieutenant Martinez's analysis of their ship designs, then disappear back into the field before the Draconians could lock weapons on them. Admiral Vexthor watched in growing fury as his ships reported damage from enemies they couldn't effectively target. "These humans fight without honor," he raged. "They hide and strike like vermin." "They fight to win," his second-in-command observed quietly. The space battle continued for hours. The human ships, despite taking damage, maintained their hit-and-run tactics. Gradually, the Draconian formation began to break down as more and more ships reported critical systems failures. Finally, Admiral Vexthor was forced to order a retreat. As his flagship moved away from Nexus 7, he stared at the viewscreen with hatred in his reptilian eyes. "We will return," he hissed. "And next time, we will be prepared for these human tactics." On the bridge of the Intrepid, the crew cheered as the Draconian fleet retreated. Captain Porter allowed herself a small smile but knew this was only the beginning. The tiny army had proven itself in battle, but the war was far from over. Admiral Morgan contacted her from Earth Command. "The Alliance High Council is requesting your presence," he told her. "They want to hear your assessment of Draconian weaknesses and your tactical recommendations." "They're taking us seriously now," Lydia observed. Morgan nodded. "Nothing earns respect like success. The tiny army isn't being mocked anymore." The Alliance Council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate the largest member species. Captain Lydia Porter felt tiny as she stood at the center of the room. Giant aliens from 27 different worlds looked down at her from raised seats that formed a complete circle around her. Captain Porter of Earth, announced the council leader, a 12-foot-tall being with iridescent skin. You are summoned to share your tactical analysis of the draconian forces and your recommendations for alliance strategy. Lydia straightened her shoulders and activated the holographic display she had prepared. The room darkened as a three-dimensional image of a draconian warrior appeared, rotating slowly in the air. The Draconians have built their entire military based on their physical advantages, Lydia began. They rely on strength, size, and natural armor. These are formidable assets, but they've become too dependent on them. She pressed a control, and the hologram changed to show battle footage from Nexus 7. By analyzing their physiology and their tactics, we've identified critical weaknesses that can be exploited. For the next hour, Lydia presented the findings of Dr. Wright, Lieutenant Martinez, and the other human specialists. She explained the 6-hour endurance limit of draconian warriors, their sensitivity to bright light, and the vulnerabilities in their ship designs. When she finished, there was silence in the chamber. Then one of the largest aliens leaned forward. Why should we change our battle doctrine based on the experiences of the newest, smallest member of the Alliance? He asked, his voice rumbling through the room. Before Lydia could answer, Commander Kaloth stood from his seat. Because their doctrine works, the Zentari said firmly. I witnessed it myself. The humans defeated draconian forces 3 times their size through superior tactics and adaptability. Another council member spoke. The Draconians have always targeted what they perceive as the weakest link. They attacked the human sector first, believing it would be easy to conquer. And they were wrong, Lydia said clearly. Now they're regrouping for another assault. We need to be ready. After much discussion, the council made a historic decision. They would integrate human tactical advisors into each major alliance battle group. Furthermore, Captain Porter would join the strategic command, giving humans a voice in planning the war effort. As the meeting ended, Ambassador Helen Price, Earth's diplomatic representative, approached Lydia with a smile. That went better than expected, she said. The Alliance is finally starting to see our value. Let's hope it's not too late, Lydia replied. Admiral Vexthor won't make the same mistakes twice. Indeed, at that very moment, Admiral Vexthor was meeting with his top scientists and military leaders aboard his flagship. The massive reptilian paced back and forth, his tail swishing angrily behind him. These humans have made us look weak, he snarled. They've exploited our biological limitations and the design of our ships. We must adapt. The chief scientist, a smaller draconian with specialized implants, bowed low. We've studied the battle recordings, Admiral. The humans use their small size and quickness to their advantage. They avoid direct confrontation where our strength would prevail. Then we will force them into direct confrontation, Vexthor declared. Prepare the Sundering Fleet. We will attack their homeworld directly. Back at the Alliance headquarters, Lieutenant Gabriel Martinez was working with Alliance intelligence analysts when he discovered the draconian battle plans. Captain, he called urgently, rushing into the command center where Lydia was meeting with General Rick Foster, the commander of Earth's second wave of troops that had just arrived. The Draconians are planning to bypass our defensive positions. They're targeting Earth directly. Lydia studied the intelligence data with growing concern. They want to force us into a conventional battle where their size and strength will give them the advantage. General Foster frowned. Earth's defenses aren't prepared for a full draconian assault. We need to intercept them before they reach our solar system. We'll need the Alliance's help, Lydia said. This isn't just about protecting Earth anymore. This is about showing the Draconians that the Alliance stands together. Ambassador Price arranged an emergency council session. When some members hesitated to commit forces to defend Earth, Kaloth stood again. When my world was threatened last year, Earth sent aid despite having just joined the Alliance, the Zentari commander said. They fought for us. Now we must fight for them. The Council approved a joint operation. For the first time, a combined fleet of ships from multiple Alliance species would fight together under a unified command structure that incorporated human tactical doctrine. Captain Sam Russo, of the stealth frigate USS Shadow, led a reconnaissance mission to gather intelligence on the Draconian Sundering Fleet. His ship was designed for stealth, with advanced cloaking technology that allowed it to approach enemy vessels undetected. "They've modified their ships," Russo reported after returning from his mission. "Added smaller weapon systems to target quick-moving vessels. They're learning from their defeats." Chief Engineer Diane Lewis had anticipated this. For weeks, she had been working with her team to develop new technologies that would counter Draconian adaptations. "We've created a disruption field generator," she explained to the combined Alliance Earth Command staff. "It interferes with their targeting systems. Their new weapons won't be effective if they can't lock onto our ships." The trap was set in the Arcturan Nebula, halfway between Draconian territory and Earth. The combined Alliance fleet waited, hidden among the colorful gases and dust clouds. Human tactical advisors had helped position the ships to take advantage of the nebula's natural features. When the Draconian Sundering Fleet arrived, they found what appeared to be a small group of human ships fleeing toward Earth. Admiral Vexthor ordered immediate pursuit, not realizing he was being led into a trap. As the Draconians entered the nebula, the hidden Alliance ships activated Lewis's disruption field generators. Suddenly, the Draconian targeting systems began to fail. Their weapons fired but couldn't lock onto the fast-moving human vessels. "Now," ordered Supreme Commander Julia Grant, the newly appointed human leader of the combined forces. Alliance ships emerged from hiding places throughout the nebula. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Massive Zentari dreadnoughts provided heavy firepower while agile human vessels darted between enemy ships hitting critical systems. Other Alliance species contributed according to their strengths, creating a fighting force that was more effective than any single species could have been. Admiral Vexthor watched in disbelief as his fleet was systematically dismantled by the coordinated Alliance attack. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his officers. "They're fighting as one." The battle raged for hours. The Draconians fought fiercely, but they were caught in an unfavorable position with their technology neutralized. Gradually, their resistance began to crumble. Vexthor's flagship was the last to retreat, limping away from the battlefield with severe damage. The Admiral stared at the viewscreen with hatred in his eyes. His plan to divide the Alliance by targeting its newest member had backfired completely. Instead, he had united them as never before. On the Alliance command ship, cheers erupted as the last Draconian vessel fled. Human officers embraced their alien counterparts in celebration. Captain Porter exchanged a respectful salute with Commander Kaloth. "The tiny army has taught us much," the massive Zentari said. Lydia smiled. "And we've learned from you as well. Together we're stronger than any of us could be alone." The victory in the Arcturan Nebula marked a turning point in the war. The Alliance now recognized that size and strength were just two factors among many that determined military effectiveness. The humans had brought new perspectives, new tactics, and a spirit of adaptation that was changing the way the entire Alliance approached warfare. But the war was not over. Admiral Vexthor had escaped, and the Draconian Empire still posed a significant threat. The final confrontation was yet to come. 3 months after the battle in the Arcturan Nebula, the war against the Draconian Empire had reached a critical stage. The combined Alliance forces had pushed the Draconians back to their core systems. Victory seemed close, but Admiral Vexthor had one final desperate plan. Supreme Commander Julia Grant stood before a holographic map in the Alliance Command Center, studying the positions of both fleets. The tall, gray-haired woman had earned the respect of all Alliance species through her brilliant leadership in recent battles. "Vexthor has pulled his remaining ships back to Draconia Prime," she observed. "He's consolidating his forces for a last stand." Lord High Marshal Cathax, now the highest-ranking Alliance military official, nodded his massive head. A direct assault on their homeworld would cost many lives. There has to be another way, Captain Lydia Porter said. She had been promoted after the Arcturan victory, but had requested to remain aboard the Intrepid rather than take a desk position. Dr. Frank Peterson, a diplomatic advisor specializing in interspecies relations, stepped forward. We've been analyzing Draconian culture and history, he said. Their society places enormous value on personal honor and leadership. Their empire has always been held together by the strength of their military leaders. You're suggesting we target their leadership rather than engaging their entire fleet? Grant asked. Precisely. Peterson nodded. If Admiral Vexthor were captured or defeated in a way their culture recognizes as legitimate, the rest of their forces might stand down. This led to a bold plan. While the main Alliance fleet would approach Draconia Prime in what appeared to be a conventional attack, a smaller, specialized force would attempt to infiltrate Vexthor's command complex and capture the Admiral himself. Sergeant Kelly Banks and her Special Operations team, who had proven themselves repeatedly throughout the war, volunteered for the dangerous mission. Their small size, which had once been mocked by the Alliance, now made them perfect for the infiltration. This is our most dangerous mission yet, Kelly told her team as they prepared. The heart of Draconian territory, their most heavily guarded facility to capture their most senior military leader. Corporal Ethan Cruz checked his specialized equipment. They still think of us as weak because we're small. That's an advantage we can use. Private Olivia Davis nodded. They'll be looking for a major attack, not a small team sneaking in. Captain Russo's stealth frigate USS Shadow would transport the team as close as possible to the target. Chief Engineer Lewis had created special adaptive camouflage suits that would help the humans blend into the Draconian environment. As the mission date approached, Lieutenant Gabriel Martinez discovered something interesting in his analysis of Draconian communications. There are growing divisions among their leadership, he reported to Commander Grant. Not all Draconians support continuing the war. Some of their planetary governors are questioning Vexthor's strategies. This information added urgency to the mission. If they could capture Vexthor, the peace faction might gain control. The day of the operation arrived. The main Alliance fleet, led by Lord High Marshal Cathax, approached Draconia Prime in full battle formation. As expected, the Draconian defense fleet moved to intercept them. Meanwhile, the USS Shadow slipped through the defensive lines using its advanced cloaking technology. Captain Russo navigated the ship through a complex asteroid field that larger vessels avoided, bringing them close to the planet without detection. This is as far as we can take you, Russo told Sergeant Banks and her team. The atmospheric entry will disable our cloak. This is close enough, Kelly replied. We'll use the drop pods from here. The Special Operations team boarded small, stealth drop pods designed by human engineers. These pods, barely larger than a single person, had minimal heat signatures and were painted with light-absorbing material that made them nearly invisible against space. The pods entered the Draconian atmosphere during a massive lightning storm that helped mask their approach. They landed in a remote area 20 miles from Vexthor's command center. Using their camouflage suits and the cover of darkness, the team made their way toward the target. The massive buildings of the Draconian capital were designed for beings twice human size, which actually worked to the team's advantage. Air ducts, maintenance tunnels, and other access points that would be tight fits for Draconians were comfortable passages for humans. While the space battle raged in orbit above them, Kelly's team infiltrated the command complex through a series of ventilation shafts. Their small size allowed them to avoid most security measures designed to detect Draconian-sized intruders. They reached the central command chamber just as Admiral Vexthor was receiving reports of the battle. The massive reptilian stood before a huge tactical display, roaring orders to his subordinates. Deploy the reserve fleet. We will crush these Alliance vermin once and for all. Following their carefully rehearsed plan, Kelly's team launched non-lethal stun devices specifically calibrated for Draconian physiology. The room filled with a blinding light and a high-frequency sound that was particularly disorienting to Draconian senses. In the confusion, the human team moved quickly. While most of the team secured the perimeter, Kelly approached the disoriented Admiral. Admiral Vexthor, she announced clearly. You are captured by Alliance forces. The massive reptilian focused his eyes on the small human before him. For a moment, disbelief showed on his scaled face, then rage. "I will not be taken by a runt," he snarled, reaching for a weapon. Kelly was faster. Her specialized weapon fired a paralytic agent that Dr. Wright had developed based on his study of draconian biology. Vexthor froze in mid-motion, then collapsed. "Target secured," Kelly reported through her comm unit. Requesting extraction, the news of Vexthor's capture spread quickly through draconian forces. As Dr. Peterson had predicted, it had a profound effect. Without their admiral, and with the peace faction gaining influence, the draconian military agreed to a ceasefire. 2 weeks later, a formal peace conference began on a neutral world. Admiral Vexthor, now a prisoner of war, was brought before the gathered representatives of both the Alliance and the Draconian Empire. The captured admiral looked with hatred at Captain Porter and Supreme Commander Grant. "How is it possible?" he asked bitterly. "You are so small, so weak." "Size isn't everything, Admiral," Lydia replied. "Humans learned long ago that intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation can overcome physical limitations." Lord High Marshal. Kathak stepped forward. "The Alliance has learned this lesson as well thanks to our human allies. We will never again judge a species by their size." The peace treaty that followed ended the war and established new relations between the Alliance and the Draconian Empire. One key provision was a cultural exchange program designed by Dr. Peterson to help both sides better understand each other. 6 months later, a grand ceremony was held on Earth. Representatives from all Alliance species gathered to commemorate the victory and honor those who had served. The term tiny army, once used to mock humans, had become a term of respect throughout the galaxy. Captain Porter, now Admiral Porter, stood with her former crew from the Intrepid. "We've come a long way," she said, looking at the massive aliens, who now treated humans as equals. "And we have further to go," Supreme Commander Grant added. "This is just the beginning of humanity's role in the galaxy." As they looked up at the night sky, filled with stars and the visiting ships of their allies, they knew that the universe would never again underestimate the power of the tiny army made of humans.